She sat alone in her small, dimly lit room, staring out of the window at the gray sky. The world outside seemed just as dull and lifeless as she felt inside. Her mind was clouded with thoughts that she couldn't escape. Every day was the same, an endless cycle of waking up to a life that felt too heavy to bear, and going to bed wishing she had the courage to not wake up at all. She had tried so hard to find a way out of her despair, but every attempt to make things better had failed. Her family didn't understand her. They tried to help, but their words felt empty, like they were speaking a language she could no longer understand. They didn't see the weight she carried, the invisible burden that pressed down on her chest every moment. It was as if she was living in a world where no one could hear her, no one could see her pain. The loneliness was suffocating. Her friends had drifted away too. At first they were there for her, offering advice, sympathy, and support. But over time their patience had worn thin. They'd had their own lives to live, their own problems to deal with. And soon, her struggles became just another distant memory to them. She had become a burden in their eyes. The invitations stopped coming, the messages became fewer, and eventually, they stopped altogether. She was left with nothing but her thoughts and the gnawing emptiness inside her. It wasn't just the loneliness that ate at her. It was the feeling that no matter what she did, nothing would ever change. She had worked so hard, pushed herself so far, trying to break free from the invisible chains that kept her bound in her depression. She tried therapy, tried medications, tried different hobbies, but nothing ever seemed to work. Each time she thought she was making progress, the darkness would come back, stronger than before. It was like a constant battle that she couldn't win, and every defeat left her feeling more helpless than the last. She had once been hopeful, once believed that things could get better. There was a time when she had dreams, aspirations, and a desire to make a difference in the world. But those dreams had slowly faded, crushed under the weight of her own mind. The fire that once burned brightly in her heart had dimmed to nothing more than a flicker, ready to be extinguished by the first gust of wind. Every day felt like a struggle just to keep going, just to keep pretending that everything was fine when inside, she was falling apart. And then there were the moments of doubt, the intrusive thoughts that told her it would be easier to just give up. The whispers in her mind that said she wasn't strong enough to handle it anymore. They came at night, when the silence was deafening, when the world around her felt even more distant. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how much easier it would be to end the pain, to escape the constant ache in her chest. She knew she shouldn't think like this, but it was hard to ignore the pull of those thoughts, the tempting sense of relief they promised. There were days when she couldn't even bring herself to get out of bed. The simple act of facing the world seemed impossible. She would pull the covers over her head, hoping that the weight of the blankets would shield her from the overwhelming sadness that threatened to consume her. She would lie there for hours, feeling numb, unable to summon the energy to do anything. It wasn't that she didn't want to fight. It was that she felt so exhausted, so drained, that the thought of fighting anymore seemed futile. Even the little things she used to enjoy no longer brought her any comfort. Her favorite books, her favorite music, the places she once loved to visit, they all seemed meaningless now. The colors of the world had faded, and everything was just a blur of gray. She had lost the ability to find joy in anything. It felt as though her entire existence had become an endless waiting game, waiting for something to change, waiting for someone to help, but not knowing where to turn. Her heart ached with the weight of all the unspoken words, all the things she wished she could say to someone, anyone, but couldn't find the strength to voice. She had been holding it all in for so long, pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. But deep down she knew that pretending couldn't go on forever. The facade would eventually crack, and when it did, there would be nothing left but the emptiness. It was in moments like these, when everything felt hopeless, that she would wonder if there was any point in continuing. But every time she allowed herself to entertain the thought of giving up, she pushed it away, burying it deep inside. She wasn't ready to face that decision, not yet. But the thought lingered like a shadow that never fully went away. Her life had become a never-ending cycle of waiting for something to change, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for an answer that would give her the courage to keep going. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, she couldn't help but feel like she was stuck in an endless loop of despair. The weight of it all felt like too much to bear, and every time she thought about the future, all she saw was more of the same loneliness, the same pain, the same emptiness. She was ready to give up. She had resigned herself to the idea that nothing would ever change. The world outside her window seemed as cold and distant as it had always been, offering no promise of anything better. Every day the same dark cloud hovered above her, and every night the same empty thoughts filled her mind. She had stopped trying to fight it, stopped looking for a way out, because it felt pointless. Life had become a series of unbroken, monotonous moments, each one more painful than the last. She felt trapped in her own existence, unable to break free from the overwhelming sadness that held her hostage. But then, one fateful afternoon, something unexpected happened. She had decided to take a walk outside, something she hadn't done in weeks. The sun was hidden behind thick clouds, casting a gray shadow over the city. She wrapped herself in a worn-out jacket and stepped out into the cold, her breath visible in the air. It wasn't much, but she thought the walk might offer a brief escape from the weight of her thoughts, even if just for a few minutes. She had no destination in mind, no plans, just the simple need to move, to feel something other than the suffocating weight of her own emotions. As she walked down the quiet street, her gaze was fixed on the ground, her mind preoccupied with the endless loop of despair she couldn't shake off. She didn't notice the person approaching her until they were right in front of her. For a moment she was startled, her mind struggling to process the sudden presence in her path. "Are you okay?" a voice asked gently, pulling her out of her daze. She looked up, not sure what to expect. The voice belonged to an older man, someone she didn't recognize. His face was kind, his eyes full of warmth and understanding. He stood there with a soft expression, as though he wasn't in a hurry and had all the time in the world to offer her. For a split second, she almost felt uncomfortable. She was used to being alone, to keeping her struggles to herself, and the thought of someone caring enough to stop and ask how she was doing felt almost foreign to her. "I'm fine," she replied quietly, her voice barely a whisper. She tried to move past him, but something in his gaze stopped her. "No, you're not," he said softly, taking a step forward, as if sensing the turmoil inside her that she hadn't said aloud. "I can see it in your eyes. You don't have to pretend." Her heart skipped a beat. She had never been good at hiding her emotions, but she had always tried her best to do so in front of strangers, to avoid being vulnerable. But something about this man made her feel different. His voice was calm, non-judgmental, and filled with a kind of quiet certainty. It made her feel as though she didn't have to hide her pain, that it was okay to let someone see it. She felt her chest tighten, the familiar ache rising once again. She wanted to push him away, to tell him to mind his own business, but instead, she found herself standing there, unsure of what to do. The silence stretched between them for a moment, and then, to her surprise, the man spoke again. "I know life can be hard sometimes," he said, his voice steady and soothing. "But sometimes, all it takes is one person to make you see things differently. One person who believes in you when you don't believe in yourself." She didn't know why, but his words hit her harder than she expected. She had heard similar things before, but this time, they felt different. This time, there was something real behind them. Something genuine, something that reached deep inside her. The wall she had built around her heart seemed to crack, just slightly in that moment. "I'm not sure I believe in anything anymore," she said quietly, her voice shaky. "It's all just too much. I don't know how to keep going." The man nodded, his expression softening even further. He didn't rush to offer advice or tell her what to do. Instead, he simply stood there listening, allowing her to speak, giving her the space to express what she had been holding in for so long. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," he said gently. "It's okay to not know what comes next. But that doesn't mean you should give up. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, even from strangers, can change everything. And maybe that's what you need right now, a reminder that there is good in the world, even if it's hard to see." She stared at him, trying to make sense of his words. Could it really be that simple? Could the kindness of a stranger change everything? She wasn't sure, but something in her heart stirred at the thought. She had been so focused on her own pain, so consumed by her own suffering, that she had stopped seeing the possibilities around her. The world hadn't disappeared. She had just closed herself off from it. The man gave her a small, encouraging smile, as if he knew exactly what she was thinking. "If you ever need someone to talk to," he said, "I'm here. No pressure, no expectations. Just a kind ear." For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. And that was enough to make her stop, to pause, and to consider that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the darkness she had been living in. The man didn't stay long. He smiled one more time and turned to walk away, leaving her standing there in the cold, but feeling slightly less alone than before. She watched him disappear down the street, a part of her still unsure of what to make of the encounter, but another part of her, the part that had been buried for so long, felt a sense of possibility rising within her. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And that was more than she had had in a long time. Days passed since their brief encounter, but something had shifted inside her. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but the warmth of that stranger's words lingered in her mind, gently nudging her from the suffocating fog that had clouded her thoughts for so long. At first, she dismissed it as a fleeting moment, just a kind gesture from someone who didn't truly know her. But with each passing day, she found herself thinking about it more and more. She began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was something to it, something worth exploring. For the first time in a long while, she found herself willing to try again. It wasn't a grand realization, but a quiet shift, like a seed planted deep inside her heart, slowly starting to sprout. She began to take small steps, hesitant but determined. She started to go outside again, even if it was just for a short walk. The world felt a little less harsh, the air a little fresher, as though the simple act of breathing didn't feel like a burden anymore. She still felt lost and uncertain, but she wasn't as trapped as she had been. She found herself walking the same route she had taken that day, hoping to see that man again, though she wasn't sure why. There was something in his presence that had made her feel safe, something that had made her believe that maybe there was a way out of the darkness after all. She hadn't expected it, but that one small conversation had sparked something in her, something she hadn't felt in years, a flicker of hope. And then, one afternoon, as she wandered through the same quiet street, she saw him again. He was sitting on a park bench, reading a book, the same calm expression on his face that she remembered. It was as though the world around him moved in slow motion, and he remained untouched by it. She stood for a moment, unsure if she should approach him, if she should disturb his peaceful solitude. But something in her heart urged her forward. She walked slowly toward him, her steps unsure, but her resolve growing stronger with each passing second. "Hi," she said softly, not entirely sure what to say but feeling the need to speak. He looked up, his face lighting up with recognition. "Hello again," he greeted her warmly. There was no hesitation in his voice, no surprise. It was as if he had been waiting for her, or maybe, just maybe, he had always known she would come back. "I've been thinking about what you said," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know why, but it felt different. What you said. I didn't realize it at the time, but maybe I needed to hear it." He closed the book and placed it on the bench beside him, his eyes never leaving hers. There was no judgment in his gaze, just understanding. "Sometimes all we need is someone to remind us of what's already inside us," he said quietly. "You have strength, even if you don't feel it right now. Healing isn't about being perfect. It's about taking the next step, no matter how small." His words wrapped around her like a blanket, warming her in a way that was so unfamiliar, so new. She had been used to hearing people tell her to move on, get over it, or just let it go, as though it were that simple. But his words were different. They didn't dismiss her pain. They didn't try to erase it. They simply acknowledged that healing was a journey, not a destination. And that journey, however long and difficult, was one she didn't have to take alone. "I don't know if I can heal," she said, her voice small. "I don't know if I can ever be whole again." The man smiled gently. "Healing isn't about being whole. It's about accepting where you are right now, and then choosing to keep going, even when it feels impossible. It's about being kind to yourself, forgiving yourself for the pain you've been through, and understanding that it's okay to not have all the answers. The important thing is to try, even when you don't feel like it." For the first time, she felt the tightness in her chest loosen. It wasn't gone, not completely, but it was softer, less suffocating. His words had pierced through the armor she had built around herself, and in that moment she realized that maybe, just maybe, she could heal. Not in some grand, dramatic way, but in small, quiet moments like this one. The man reached into his bag and pulled out a small notebook, handing it to her. "Sometimes it helps to write things down," he suggested. "You don't have to share it with anyone. Just write what's in your heart. You'd be surprised at what it can do." She took the notebook from him, her fingers brushing against his for a brief moment. The contact was gentle, but it felt like the touch of someone who truly cared, someone who understood her in ways she hadn't expected. She held the notebook in her hands, feeling the weight of it, both physically and emotionally. It felt like a new beginning. "Thank you," she said softly, looking up at him with a sense of gratitude she hadn't known she had. "I don't know what to say, but thank you." The man smiled again, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You don't need to say anything. Just take it one step at a time." As she walked away from the park bench, the notebook clutched tightly in her hands. She felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The healing wasn't instant, and she knew it wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long while, she believed that it was possible. There was still pain, still uncertainty, but there was also hope. And that hope, no matter how fragile, was enough to carry her through. The journey was just beginning. And with each step, she would learn to heal. The days that followed felt different, as if the world had shifted just enough to allow her to breathe again. The weight she had carried for so long, the invisible burden that had been slowly crushing her, seemed a little lighter. It wasn't gone, no, not entirely. But it felt bearable now, more like something she could manage rather than something that would destroy her. She had learned something powerful in the weeks that followed her encounter with the stranger. Healing was not about perfection, nor was it about magically erasing the pain. It was about learning to live with it, to grow from it, and to take one step forward, even when every part of her wanted to remain frozen in place. She had started small. Writing in the notebook the man had given her became part of her daily routine. Each word she wrote felt like a small release, a way to give shape to the chaos inside her. She wrote about her fears, her doubts, her pain, and her moments of fleeting hope. The pages filled slowly, one day at a time, and though she wasn't sure if anyone would ever read it, she felt as though she was telling a part of her story she had kept hidden for so long. The act of writing gave her permission to feel, to acknowledge the hurt, and to say, "I am here, and I am surviving." But it wasn't just the writing that had started to change her. She had begun to reconnect with the world in small ways. It started with the walks, short ones at first, to places close to her home. Then she ventured further, walking down streets she hadn't dared to visit in a long time. She would sit in a park for hours, watching people pass by, listening to their laughter, watching the sunlight dance through the trees. She didn't feel so alone anymore. There were moments when the world seemed to wrap itself around her, and though she was still hurting, she found a strange comfort in just being a part of it. It was as if, by showing up, she was reclaiming a life she had almost given up on. One afternoon as she sat in the park, notebook in hand, she saw the man again. He was sitting on the same bench, his familiar smile greeting her as she walked toward him. There was no tension, no nervousness in her chest like there had been before. She wasn't expecting anything this time, no big conversation, no life-changing moment. She simply wanted to thank him again for the kindness he had shown her, even if he didn't realize how much it had meant. "Hello," she said with a genuine smile, her voice steady and calm. The man looked up from his book, a warm look crossing his face. "It's good to see you again," he said, his voice filled with a quiet kindness. "How have you been?" She took a seat beside him, her heart no longer filled with the uncertainty it once had been. "I've been better," she replied honestly. "Not perfect, but better, and that feels like enough right now." He smiled, and for a moment, she felt like there was nothing more she needed to say. His eyes, kind and understanding, seemed to say everything that needed to be said. "That's all any of us can do," he said softly. "Just keep moving forward, one step at a time." She looked down at the notebook in her hands, then back at him. "I've been writing," she said, her voice almost hesitant, but filled with quiet pride. "It's helping more than I thought it would. It's like I'm finally giving myself permission to feel." He nodded thoughtfully, as though he had known exactly what she was talking about all along. "Feeling is the first step," he said. "And once you allow yourself to feel, you'll start to see things differently. You'll begin to understand that even the darkest moments have something to teach you." "I'm starting to see that," she said with a soft laugh. "I don't have it all figured out, but I'm not as scared of it anymore." The man's expression softened, and he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, and that's all that matters. Healing isn't a destination, it's a journey, and it's one that you don't have to walk alone." She took in his words, letting them sink in. The idea that healing was a journey, that it didn't have to happen all at once, was something she had struggled to accept. She had spent so much time wishing for a quick fix, a way to erase the pain and move on with her life. But now, as she looked at the path she was walking, step by step, day by day, she realized that it was the small moments, the quiet progress that truly mattered. She had started to take charge of her life again. She had reached out to friends she had distanced herself from, slowly rebuilding connections that had been broken by her own self-imposed isolation. She had found joy in the little things like sipping coffee in the morning sunlight, or feeling the wind against her face as she walked through the streets. These moments, though small, were enough to remind her that life was still beautiful, that there was still love and kindness in the world, even when it felt hidden beneath layers of pain. And with each new day, the darkness began to lift a little more. She wasn't fully healed, not yet, but she was learning to live with her scars, to wear them like badges of courage rather than burdens. She no longer felt like a prisoner to her own mind. She was free to be who she was, to embrace the beauty of the present moment, and to step into the future with a heart that was still healing, but full of hope. As she stood up to leave, she turned to the man one last time, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everything he had unknowingly given her. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything. I don't think I could have done this without you." The man smiled, his eyes sparkling with quiet understanding. "You didn't need me to do it," he said. "You always had the strength within you. I just reminded you of it." With those final words, she walked away, the weight of her past no longer weighing her down. She was ready to embrace the future, one step at a time, and for the first time in a long time, she felt as though she was finally on the right path. The journey wasn't over, but it was only just beginning.